Hello. Right after this is lunch, so we'll try to keep it on time. So my name is Kevin Kissi. I'm the founder of Kissi & Co. and also an engineering association called Engineer Africa. I'm also an ex-manager, engineering manager at Microsoft. So smart infrastructure design stands on the heels of historical data acquired from telemetry from sensors. From that, analytics can be produced. From your experiences, how are sensors and telemetry data providing insights and predictive capabilities in infrastructure design and management?
Thanks, Kevin. Firstly, I'm representing Tudor Samulia from Minara. My name's Gordon Porter. I'm part of the Paradigm Infrastructure Group, which is the lead shareholder in Minara. It's a tower company. And basically, I've got sort of 14, 15 years of experience in managing passive infrastructure through various forms throughout Africa. So I'll be kind of providing a perspective from a towerco. Answering the question that you've asked, Kevin, is, and I think it's been a consistent theme through various panels. Data is the key. As a tower company, it's absolutely essential that we have the right and correct levels of power availability, and that means making sure that we've got the right fuel on site. And for anybody who is kind of familiar with the electricity grid in Tanzania, great availability, but the mechanism for topping it up means physically going to the site and topping the meters up manually. It's a very kind of manual exercise, but we don't have smart meters. We're unable to see remotely from the meter how much credit is available. So we have developed a kind of an industry-leading remote site monitoring solution, and it monitors basically all aspects of the site from a passive perspective. It measures the levels of diesel that are in the tank. It measures the level of contaminants and particulates that may be interfered with. It measures the rate of consumption, and if we find that the consumption is out of kilter with the generator size and somebody's made a pinprick of a hole, we can identify that. It also enables us to identify precisely the temperature within the equipment shelters from the customers, so we can see before there's an issue. We can see if the site is going to be running out of diesel. We can plan our fueling loops around the availability. We can plan the maintenance around the generator run hours, and this is also integrated with smart locking solutions. Previously the de facto kind of solution was the use of keys, and keys just get passed around. You lose access. You don't know who's on site when they're on site. And the solution that we've implemented and that we adopt today is a smart locking solution. You have to call our 24/7 network operations center. It gives you a code, and that code is specific to you, to your phone, to the site for a period of time, and you can't transfer that to anybody else. So we know precisely how long you're on site for. We know when you opened the door, we know when you left, and we can overlay that with the information from the remote site monitoring and drive efficiencies that way. So the remote site monitoring tools, the smart locking tools are at the heart of our business as an infrastructure business, and talking about the availability and the requirements that our customers have, I think we're blind without this sort of information. And also, seeing some of our partners and customers here today, we have access to their, OSS systems. That's fed through to our NOC, and we're able to kind of troubleshoot remotely by the use of the OSS system, the use of the remote site monitoring system, and we're able to kind of pinpoint and identify what the likely cause of the outage is, rather than dispatching field service, an RF guy, a field guy. We can actually hone in on the likely cause and make sure there's a much more efficient use of resources. So, Kevin, answering the question, the data is to the heart of our business, really. Okay.
Amazing.
Said from Green Telecom. Green Telecom is a sustainable digital infrastructure company. We focus in terms of from telecom installations, service, internet service provider, value-added services. We support MNOs, other service providers, content providers also. So just to summarize, from a fellow panelist, the sensors basically help to gather real-time data that enable the tools for analytics to be able to give actionable insights that help to resolve issues. So for example, the best example is the National Fiber Backbone, the NICTDV. It is capable of self-healing. So for example, it has between 0 to 3 minutes whereby traffic is automatically routed to an alternative route in case one of the parts is affected by a fiber cut, for example. So you have such a smart infrastructure as NICTVB being able to give quality and efficient services to service providers and also the neighboring countries that are within Tanzania, and those are like 8 countries that are surrounding Tanzania. So I would say reliability, giving real-time, actionable results, and efficiency.
Amazing. We'll move on to AI and ML. So back in 2015, I was working on an AI and machine learning product. At the time, nobody was talking about AI and machine learning. Today, ChatGPT has made AI and machine learning quite popular. And everybody is integrating some form of AI and machine learning into their products and services. Looking into the future and also today, how is AI and ML improving infrastructure? You can speak in specifics of which AI technology or ML models you guys are incorporating.
Thanks, Kevin. I think from a sort of a towerco and an infrastructure, passive infrastructure company, I think we're probably at the infancy, of our journey in terms of using, AI or machine learning. As we've kind of outlined, the remote site monitoring gives us an absolute, wealth of data to kind of base our, planned maintenance schedules, our capital planning schedules. But I think, being blunt and honest with you, we're at the infancy of our journey on this at the moment. And, certainly from a Minara perspective, we're not actively using AI and machine learning at the moment. But, that's not to say that in the years ahead, we won't be. I mean, we have basically 30 data sets from every single site, every single minute. So there's a wealth of data that we'll certainly be able to to harvest and use in the future. Not a helpful answer to your question, but we're starting that journey.
On my side, as Green Telecom has been working with the MNOs in terms of providing value-added services in partnership with the telcos. So we've built systems that interact directly with the end users based out of different gaming platforms, for example, fantasy sports, infotainment, and based out of that, there's gratifications that go through different, for example, trivias that they tend to play, and and they get gratified based out of answers that they provide to different questions. And this helps to gather large information in terms of analytics and be able to help the end user to have options of predictions, for example, for fantasy sports and the likes of other gaming platforms.
Amazing. So how are smart infrastructure delivering better customer success in your respective institutions? And you can speak in terms of productivity and quality of the products and services.
Sure. So I think we've heard other people talk about the kind of the evolution of the product suite for tower companies, and still very much the core offering is macro towers, the larger towers that we're all kind of familiar with, but we're certainly seeing a push from our customers for different solutions to kind of offer 4G, 5G, and small cells, street level furniture, distributed antenna systems are all technologies that we're familiar with, that we're using. But I think to kind of list out some of the challenges, we heard the guys from Helios and the work that they've done at Carrico Market in Dar es Salaam, and it's a fantastic system. I mean, it's a shared distributed antenna system. It's right down at street level. It gives really solid coverage at a lower level. But these systems are at present very complicated, very time consuming to deliver. So for example, if we are to build a macro site, we identify a solution. There's usually one landlord. We deal with the landlord, build the site. However, with the smaller cells and the distributed antenna systems, if you're dealing with private landlords, you're dealing with a large number of private landlords, both for the initial acquisition phase and then also for the onward management and onward maintenance. And that's a challenge, and that takes an awful lot of time. Distributed antenna systems, we offer a number of distributed antenna systems, and some of the challenges that we face there with the airports, for example, if you've got a problem on the air side, and it's a port of entry, it's a very critical area, you've got to make sure that you've got airside security cleared people that are capable to get to the site to give the sort of 99.9% uptime. And these are very kind of nuanced problems and issues, but these are the sort of the directions that the MNOs and the telcos are heading to, and as infrastructure providers, we're having to adapt to make sure that we can support those as well. So basically, small cells, distributed antenna systems, and in certain areas, Open RAN solutions as well. Okay.
But how are your customers benefiting? Any testimonials that you could mention?
I think the customers benefit because it provides an additional level of coverage. So you have your macro layer provided by your rooftop installations, the masts and the towers. But then with the small cells and the distributed antenna systems, you actually get a richer level of coverage inside of the buildings, down at street level. And I think we've all faced challenges using mobile networks in the past, and having smaller cells closer to the the consumer in a more dense level provides a much better user experience for the end consumers, and consequently our customers as well.
Thank you.
So smart infrastructure helps to enhance customer experience in terms of efficiency, safety, real-time updates, reliability, So you have instances of from a level of IoT devices that are placed on, let's say, buildings to be able to give alerts in terms of fires, detections, and all the likes. The other advantage is it helps also predict future maintenance in terms of if a system or an infrastructure has regular alerts. It helps to analyze the timeline in terms of the next either update or maintenance.
Awesome. Anytime we talk about data in transit, we have to get into risk. But before we get to that, let's talk about some examples of great, smart infrastructure in Africa today.
I think I'm going to pass on this one to my colleague here, and then maybe come back in a moment.
Yeah. So a simple example of smart infrastructure is the best actually is M-Pesa. So M-Pesa has been, it's actually one of the biggest revolutionary innovation that has ever happened to Africa. I can't wait for the next best thing, but I believe we have the potential of creating the next best thing out there. So I would say M-Pesa, you have the likes of, in South Africa, for example, the power company that has managed to establish infrastructure to ensure that there is solar reachability and efficiency, and wind and other renewable energy services.
I think that's a great example. So, as we have to talk about the risk, every time you build anything smart, there's going to be some risks that go along with that. In terms of governance of data, cybersecurity becomes a thing to also manage. What are some of the risks involved currently you guys are seeing?
So from a sort of a telco infrastructure company perspective, I think the largest risk that we face is vandalism, theft, criminal damage. To ensure that we have the 99.99% availability, the infrastructure basically has connection to the grid wherever possible. We have maybe a diesel generator, but we're obviously trying to move away from the use of diesel as either a primary or a secondary power source, and so that means that there's an increasing reliance on backup batteries, either lead acid batteries or increasingly lithium-ion batteries, and also the use of solar systems, smart solar systems to provide these power solutions. Now, we've seen significant levels of theft and vandalism of the lead acid batteries in particular. There's a multitude of alternative and secondary uses for such batteries, right down to kind of recycling the components, using the batteries. Also, diesel theft as well, where you've got the active diesel theft where somebody breaks into the site and steals the physically steals the diesel. You've got the other issues where you've got seepage and losses, through the supply chain, where what you pay for at the start isn't necessarily what you end up on site. And then the other issues that you have is basically people vandalizing the solar systems because they've got a vested interest in the generators running, and the sites consuming diesel. So, I mean, these are practical, real risks, and it's exacerbated by the fact that there's very little correlation between these issues taking place on sites and there being a physical presence of a security guard. So we're looking for smarter solutions, not necessarily just CCTV camera, outlined the remote site locking so we know who's on site, we can pinpoint who's there. But the biggest challenge that we face is basically criminal damage and vandalism. And I think probably the final point on this is to make sure that we're able to catch people that do this. We are sophisticated enough to figure out the batteries have got increasingly have got tracking devices, so we know sometimes when they get stolen where they go. We know that the routes that they take. We know where they're and you can kind of we've got examples where we've actually infiltrated the gangs that do this, because this is an organised criminal activity. Stealing batteries from sites isn't something that you or I could do, and accordingly it's an organised syndicated crime, and we've infiltrated these gangs, and we've worked with the security services to apprehend the suspects that have been involved. And then we find that when it comes to sentencing and the judicial system, they don't necessarily see this as a physical crime against a person, and we see very lenient fines and sentences, and these guys are back out on the streets doing this again. And we've all heard the criticality of the networks and the role that they play in society, but the actual issues of theft, vandalism, it's the guys from Helios will attest as well. It's one of the biggest challenges facing our business today, and we just need to make sure that at the back end, when we do apprehend these suspects and we do capture them, that they are treated as if they're damaging critical national infrastructure, and at the moment that's not necessarily happening in all cases.
Can you talk more about maybe future ways to kind of prevent them in the first place, smart-wise?
Yeah, I mean, we use for the batteries, we use tracking devices. So we're able to kind of track where the batteries are. And there's also a lot of sort of physical engineering that goes onto the site with site hardening measures, caging of the generator units, and in particular, to the point that we actually bury the battery systems underground and put them in concrete chambers at the most extreme examples. So Tanzania is in no way at the level that South Africa is, and obviously with the power challenges that South Africa faces, and I think it's well documented the issues that the mobile operators and the tower companies have in South Africa. But it's a two-pronged approach, Kevin, and it's very site-specific as well, because this all costs. This all adds to the bottom line. It's all it's all a cost that we have to recover through our charges. So the more that we can use the working with the security services, the judiciary, to take these guys off the street, the better it is. And also I think there's a role that society has. If people are offered solar systems, battery systems, inverters for their homes, if they know that this has been taken from a site, then they themselves need to be making responsible decisions, which is another angle entirely.
Well, this is taking another angle, but I'm sure with improvement of documenting of criminals, I think we could probably do a better job at making sure that we prevent them from committing future crimes. Same question for you.
So before I answer in terms of the risks, so I would like to just add up on my colleague. The other thing that you would potentially add on in terms of maybe reduce the risk of vandalism or maybe theft is the areas that you put these towers or your infrastructure is you could approach the local people and enable them in terms of they should be providing this security for you in addition to the smart devices that you have. So at the same time, you're ensuring that they provide the security for you. At the same time, you also enabling the local people in that area. So the biggest risk in smart infrastructure is cybersecurity. So what needs to be done is we need to put very robust security measures to ensure we do not have data breach and potential disruption into the infrastructure and information, basically. So tools have to be put in place to ensure that you have potential cyber attacks, and from prevention to when they happen in real time. The other thing I would say is the risk of smart infrastructure is project management. So it becomes very hard in terms of managing several different, so basically during integration of several technologies to be able to manage a project, for example. So you have, from an instance of, let's say, from an infrastructure, meaning the tower companies to the service providers to the end users. So basically, the different kind of tools that are used by different providers. So having this, all these platforms integrated in one, it becomes a challenge. The other thing is governance and regulation. So we have to put in place the strict ICT policies that look forward in terms of what we have right now in terms of smart infrastructure and where we see ourselves up ahead in terms of our vision to be 80% digitally transformed. So policies are everything. So it has to be in line with, in terms of, from the provider sides till on the government side and security, even to the financial side also.
Wonderful, that's very comprehensive. We're running out of time, so we're going to go to the audience and take a few questions.
Any questions? Yeah.
Thanks. I have two questions. The first one is related to the vandalism challenge that we have in Africa. You touched it a little bit, but I want to expand that. Perhaps it goes back to how inclusive this infrastructure is for the community. If the community has a stake in that infrastructure and they have ownership, they benefit from that, the likelihood of providing security as well as not vandalizing it is high likely. There was unscientific study in one of the countries as riots was going on, and banks were being burned, and the assessment was that if a person has a deposit in that bank, it's less likely that person goes in and burns that bank, right? So maybe there is that angle. How inclusive are we in those areas may solve some of it. Obviously, there will be some folks that just want to steal, right? That's the given, and that happens everywhere. It's not an African issue. The second question I have is related to cybersecurity. Even in the past conversation, maybe the true security is a disconnected platform. If the information doesn't need to be accessible, and it needs to be disconnected from the wider connection, right? From the wider network, right? Maybe that's something we should look at.
Hang on, let's take one more question from here.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Mzee, the Director of Communication in Ministry of Infrastructure and Communication and Transport in Zanzibar government. Infrastructure is becoming smarter due to technical advance. My question is, how does artificial intelligence and big data work together in protecting our infrastructures? Thank you.
Any other? Yes, we'll take one more question and then on the answers.
Yeah, so I'm very certain that the smart infrastructure brought a lot of synergies in terms of the operational excellence and maybe OPEX efficiency. So do you guys see it as a game changer that in the future you may review the operating costs that you are giving it to the guys who are leasing the infrastructure so that they can continue investing to reach other people who are not served today?
So I'll take two of those questions. I'll answer yours in a moment, Ramadan. Answering the first question around, community involvement in helping prevent, theft and vandalism. Our preferred solution is to ensure that the local community are actively engaged in the protection, the support of the infrastructure which they directly benefit from, and there are countless case studies of where this has delivered exceptional results. But I think I go back to the point that unfortunately this theft is from criminal syndicates, and we also have unfortunate instances where security guards, members of the local community have been, physically assaulted, and in some cases, seriously injured trying to support and protect the infrastructure. And I think that's kind of, a level to which these, these criminals will go. Answering, Ramadan's question of do we see these technology advances being, a game changer. I think all evolution, even in the boring passive infrastructure and the tower company environment, will produce efficiencies. We're seeing that already. We're already under significant pressures from the mobile operators. As you go further and further into the more rural areas and the lower subscriber levels, the more difficult it is to kind of make the business model for services and infrastructure work. So I think we're working tirelessly to find ways to improve our operational efficiency, finding ways to kind of reduce the capital investment, and ultimately the beneficiaries will be the mobile operators and their ultimate customers as well.
Thank you.
I would like to answer Dr. Mzee's question I'll try and be as quick as possible. So first is having clear policy frameworks in terms of government should provide a clear regulatory framework and standards to guide the development and implementation of smart infrastructure. The second would be incentives for innovation. Encouraging the private sector involvement by offering incentives for research, development, deployment of smart technologies. The third would be public-private partnerships. This help to foster collaboration between government agencies, private companies, and academic institutions to pool resources, expertise, and investments. The fourth would be continuous evaluation, regularly assessing the impact of smart infrastructure. The fifth would be community engagement, involving the local community in the planning and implementation process to address their specific needs and concerns.
Awesome. In Africa, we need very unique solutions and smart solutions to help us with our developmental journey. Here today, we talked about using sensors and data to help guide the design of smart infrastructure. We talked about AI and ML. We talked about what the implications of customer success and quality. We also talked about the risk involved in implementing smart infrastructure. And we also talked about how we can actually protect these new devices that are being incorporated into our infrastructure. That's it. Thank you very much. Thank you, panelists. Wonderful job.
Round of applause again for Kevin, Saeed, and Ali. Thank you so much for a fantastic session on smart infrastructure. Thanks to our speakers for the audience.